drums will bang, the cymbals tang, the horns will blaze away.
Hey guys, how's it going? So this month I have been taking items out of my pantry and practicing with them. The stuff that's shelf stable, maybe some stuff that would be considered long-term storage. And all I'm trying to do is take a couple items and just make sure that I'm using them, rotating through them, and practicing using the things that I'm pulling out. Yesterday was St. Patrick's Day, and I wanted to do corned beef and cabbage. And I had remembered that I had canned some, and then I also had freeze-dried some. So I went down to my beef. I have a little plastic thing that I keep my beef meals in. And I had kind of forgotten that a couple years ago, when my son-in-law was in the military, we would make up meals and send them down to him. So I had a couple meals squirreled away in there. And a lot of times David will put those in his backpack if he's going to be doing a hiking trip, or he's going to be doing some work in the off-grid truck that he's made up. So these are meals that he can just dump water in and he eats, and they work out really well for him. You can see here, this one's corned beef cabbage meal. It's gluten-free. I made it back in 3 of 23. It makes 1 pound 4 ounces, and I know I need to add 2 cups of water. So what I did with this is I boiled my water, put this in a little pan, drizzled my water over it slowly. You can see the pictures. This is the carrot, you can see the potatoes and the little chunks of meat in there. Slowly poured my water over it, put a lid on it, let it set my microwave for 15 minutes. And I come back to it and I opened it up and I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. Because it'd be really cool to make a whole pot of this, freeze dry it, and then when we just need a quick meal, I could just pour that in there and I've got a meal. So I'm like really excited, And I go and I spoon out a carrot and I, kind of looking at it and I taste it and I'm like, oh my gosh, really? I was really bummed out. To me, the texture it's like a way overcooked carrot. Way overcooked. Tasted good. Texture was off. So I tried the potato and I thought, oh my gosh, beautiful chunk of potato. I put it in my mouth and and it's same thing, very, there's no texture to it. It just kind of dissolved in my mouth. Fished out a piece of the meat and the meat was amazing. Like, is soft and tender. There was a good chew to it. So that was really good. I pulled out a piece of the cabbage and I could taste the cabbage, but it wasn't the same as if I were to steam it. I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit bummed. I really wanted it to be my corned beef and cabbage that we normally have on St. Patrick's Day. So David came home. He had picked up some feed for the animals, so he was out doing some chores. Come in a couple hours later, and I had just re-warmed up the stuff that was freeze-dried that I had made up for him to try it. I never said nothing because I didn't want to put my opinion of the food into his head. By then, it had gotten much thicker, like a stew. A stew would be the best way to describe it. So he scoops up a big old bite and he goes, oh, what is this? This looks really good. And I almost choked because I'm like, all right, get it in your mouth, buddy. He puts it in his mouth and he's like, oh, this is really good. Is this a new recipe, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, this was the freeze-dried stuff from a couple years ago. He's like, wow, this is amazing. And so I'm like, okay. I tried it again. And by then it had set a little bit longer. Everything had kind of come together, was thicker, saucier. And I tried it. And I'll have to admit, it was good. But by saying that, what I'm going to say is, if I was expecting my corned beef and cabbage like I had made for dinner last night, I would have been very disappointed. And that's only because I know what good stuff tastes like. But had I had this and somebody just said it's corned beef and cabbage stew, I would have been like, this is really good. So I'm really glad that I have practiced with this, because I know for the future, I will probably still, if I have leftover corned beef and cabbage, I'd probably freeze it for a quick meal. David really liked this, so as long as I know that somebody will eat it, I would probably make some more. This, if I were to do, like I wanted to save it for longer term, I would freeze dry the item. Well, I would freeze dry the meat separately with maybe some broth. Carrots and the potatoes, I probably would choose not to freeze dry them like this. I would probably choose to either can them and then add the canned. So I would either can carrots and potatoes and keep those separated and then add them all back together. Or what I'd probably likely do is I would just store them in my basement in either some straw or some sand, the carrots and the potatoes, because even if, you know, we get to the end of the season and they're a little bit soft, I could still use those in a corned beef cabbage type meal like this. Also, same thing with cabbage. I would probably, because we will grow the cabbage, and I'll put it down in my root cellar, my basement area, you know, where it's nice and cold. The outsides of those cabbages will dry out, but all you have to do is peel those layers off, and the inside of the cabbage head is still good up until spring. As a matter of fact, we just gave the pigs the last of the heads that we had from last fall, and there were a couple of them that I peeled the outside layers off that were dry, and the balls on them were nice size like this, the heads that was left. So the takeaway from this is I am so glad that I am challenging myself to use the things that I have in my pantry, because I wouldn't have known that I don't love the carrots and the potatoes like this if I hadn't tried it. And I'd much rather know now that I don't like it than later, when I have done, you know, if I do a 25-pound bag of potatoes or a 25-pound bag of carrots, you know, blanch them, freeze dry them, get them all put away, I'd have been really bumming. So this is a really good experience. I'm going to use this as a good learn, I think this was a good thing, even though it wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be. This is why we love doing these trials, to see where our holes are, to see where we're weak, see where we need to do things a little bit differently. And that's what the goal of doing this, working out of your pantry, using your shelf-stable stuff, trying something new to see what we like and what we don't like. Because a lot of times people they'll put away stuff in their pantry, you know, for a power outage. Some people go a lot longer than that. You know, they want, because of finances or whatever the reason, they have a more stocked or deeper emergency preparedness pantry. And a lot of times they'll put stuff in there and they, you know, dry beans and dry rice and things that they don't normally eat. And it's nice, yeah, it's nice to have that stuff stocked up. But if you're not going to eat it, or if you don't know that you don't, you know, if you like it or not, don't store it. Or learn how to make things that you guys will actually use. So that's the takeaway from this. And we're halfway through the month. Every day this month, I've been taking shelf-stable things and trying to at least use one item in a meal during the day. And I initially said, you know, technically, iodized salt or sea salt or any of those things, your spices, those do count as shelf-stable stuff, but challenge yourself, guys. Don't take the easy route and be like, oh, I'm just going to use, you know, my dried rice. If you know how to use dry rice, challenge yourself. If you know how to use dry beans, challenge yourself to do something other than just boiling them in a chili or something like that. Kind of think outside the box and use items that you don't use on the daily, but you keep them in your pantry for an emergency. You know, and the other thing too, that maybe, I'm trying to think of next month, at some point I want to do it where it's alternative energy for cooking these items. You know, for instance, when I have the solar oven out and I'm wanting to do boiled eggs. Well, in my house, because I boil eggs often for David or for pickling or whatever, I know how long it takes me to boil an egg. When I'm using that sun oven, it's 3 hours of good sun. And I can't start it like at 7 o'clock in the morning for breakfast. So if I hadn't been practicing with that sun oven, I wouldn't know that it takes so long to cook those eggs, right? And I wouldn't know that I can't, you know, the sun is not up at 7 o'clock in the morning. So if I'm going to do a boiled egg for David, or boiled eggs, of course I'm not going to just throw one egg in there. I'm going to kind of, I want to maximize my heat from that sun oven. So I'm going to put in more eggs than that. If I can keep them cold and all that. But I will get these ready, and then this will be something for tomorrow. So the whole idea behind that one is going to be, again, practicing. You know, have you cooked over a fire? Can you cook on the side of your grill? You know, and how does that different than your everyday life? So that when we do have a couple day power outage, you're like, I got this. All right, guys. So until next time, keep on keeping on and get something out of that pantry and practice with it.
And elections on we play on either side. The way we play our final earth fills Irish hearts with pride. If poor Tunner was living now, he'd make us understand that none could do him justice like going back to Mary's band. When the drums go bang, the cymbals clang, the horns will